we're certainly not going to arrest our way out of the drug culture. We're not going to arrest our way out of much at all. But what I do know is there is an intersection between law enforcement and public health. And that's what I love about your model. I don't like to use absolutes like all and none and always and never. And I'll violate that by saying I believe that all human behavior is on a continuum. So if you see violent behavior, it's in the extreme, but it's on the continuum with really peaceful, passive behavior. It's human behavior. It's on the continuum. When I think about these acts of violence we're seeing now, like these people attacking the homeless and pushing people onto the subway tracks in New York City, for example, or walking up and cold cocking somebody with a steel post or hitting them in the back of the head on the sidewalk, these kinds of things, they are on the continuum of human behavior. That's why I said, is it always dysfunctional? Because I think about sports. When I was in what's now called middle school, we were poor as a snake, and a snake has no pockets. So, I mean, it was the currency for me because I didn't have like clothes and any of the things that other kids had in the school I was going with. Currency for me was athletics. Because when you stepped on the football field or whatever, it didn't matter if you had designer clothes or shoes or lived in a nice neighborhood. It was, could you run fast, jump high, and knock somebody down? So it was pretty predatory behavior, and it was rewarding. If you could run somebody down or knock them down, there was definitely a high from it, and that was my social currency. That's what I was known for. I went to college on a football scholarship. That was my currency. And so I can 100% tell you there was a payoff for being very physical. I also know when I moved into the athletic dorm in college, I looked at some of those people and thought, these are animals. I have nothing in common with some of these. I mean, they're like eating beer cans and live goldfish and stuff. And I'm thinking like, I don't belong here. But it was on the continuum. And I think about military and police officers and stuff, and some of them, you think people are either cut out for that or they're not. I knew when I was in college athletics, I thought, I'm good at this to a certain point, but I'm not cut out for it. I took a very cerebral approach to it, and I was not cut out for it. But it did serve a purpose for some of those people. It was their currency then, and it was their ticket out. I would get in the huddle, the defensive huddle, and somebody had knocked them down, blocked them really well the play before, and it was like, I'm going to get that son of a bitch. I can't wait for the next play. I'm going to lay his ass out. I mean, it wasn't about the game. It was about retaliating against that guy. And that was their motivation. And it worked for them. They'd run through a brick wall to get to this guy. Was that dysfunctional? In that paradigm, it served to motivate them. Now, did they go on to be muggers, buggers, and thieves? I don't think so. But in that paradigm, it worked for them.
Well, I like your language about continuum. So, maybe we can agree, and most of society has with the laws we have, that it becomes dysfunctional when you're physically harming somebody without their consent. Maybe we can use that as at the point at which retaliation becomes dysfunctional. You're right. In business, in litigation, even a child in a classroom wanting to compete with another child over who's going to get the most, the most number of A's in a semester, and if the one, their adversary gets more than they do, and this motivates them, they want to, win that battle and put that adversary down, and it motivates them to study more. Is that dysfunctional? No, and I'm not saying that that's dysfunctional. On the other hand, if that same child in that same circumstance went to the home of that adversary, broke a window or shot a dog or actually physically attack their adversary, that would be dysfunctional behavior. I think that's where the line is drawn. And that's really why we're talking about this, right? We're talking about physical acts of violence, dangerous violence, and not sports violence where both sides consent. Hey, when I step on the field, I agree that you can cream me. You can knock me into the dust, but you're agreeing I can do the same to you.
Well, I have two boys. They're 7 years apart, and both of them are highly trained in the martial arts. They competed. And in high school, if there were 100 boys in the class, they would be number 100 of kids likely to get in a fight because the new had worn off of it for them because they fought every day in a controlled environment. You try to get them in a fight, kids get out, try to prove their manhood. They're like, hey, listen, no, I agree. You're tougher than me. No problem. Got it. Don't want to get my shirt torn. No problem. I would see them in competition, and 1 second they're kicking their opponent in the head. 10 seconds later, the match is over, and they're saying, hey, you want to go throw the Frisbee? It was totally situation specific, mutual competition, like you said. And seconds later, they're asking the guy, hey, you want to go throw the Frisbee outside until our next matches are up?
Yeah.
And that's where I saw it contextualized in a way that was not sociopathic and dysfunctionally addictive. Even though they were highly competitive, as soon as it was over, it was like, hey, let's go get something to eat or let's go throw the Frisbee around outside. That's what demarcated it for me.
And we might go beyond that and say it's actually therapeutic. It's a part of prevention and treatment. And I think what you're talking about is, so if we want to move beyond this and go, what do we do? For instance, like you just said here, sports and those types of activities were able to help teach your boys, right, how to manage these retaliation cravings and use them in a safe manner to discharge this, because you're all going to have these cravings. I mean, none of us escape it. We all get it. So how do we manage it? What are our tools? What can we do to teach our younger generations, our current generations, adults? Everybody needs this. How do we manage it? Sports have always been effective at doing that, and I think there's a therapeutic value to it, as long as you leave it on the field. We have examples where that doesn't occur, or when something on the field crosses the line, and that means that person lost control and the therapeutic value was left and a lesson was learned. So I think that activities like that, revenge seeking that's controlled, like you said, I think it's beautiful. Then when your sons were confronted with a true opportunity to attack somebody outside of that context, they said, hey, I've learned. I don't want any part of that.
Yeah, for them, it's like, no, I'm good. They were taught, you've learned these skills for defensive purposes.
Yeah.
And the discipline of that was very, very clear. So there is a difference. And I think your model is something that should be added to the police academy in part of their protocol so they understand. You got to ask yourself, what's your motive in how you're handling these suspects or what you're doing? Because it can get toxic. And I think that's what defines a badge-heavy police officer. They're getting way too much currency out of what they're doing. And I think if they understood that, just even the insight, the awareness alone could make a huge difference. Because if you see it coming, you know it's coming, you can address it. Sometimes you can defuse it.
Sure. There's a profession, the police, that subjects itself knowingly to victimization on a daily basis. A police officer puts on that badge and goes out into the community. They are almost more than any other profession, perhaps, on a daily basis, being paid to experience the worst of humanity, to experience the most abuse you could possibly experience, including up through physical attacks, gunshots, and all of the rest. And it's pretty tough to ask a person who puts themselves in that situation, who, at some point, who's been victimized as many times as a police officer would be in a day or in a career, we shouldn't be surprised that they're going at some point to retaliate and lose their control.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. Letting law enforcement know that that's what's going on inside their brains can help address these instances of abuse of force and police brutality, which we know, statistics show those are retaliation actions. The police aren't just selecting one day to go out and pummel somebody. Most of the time, they're retaliating for an act of disrespect, betrayal, failure to obey an order, something, because they believe that they have the right to do what they're doing and somebody resists it and they just all of a sudden, retaliate. And it makes them feel better just like the rest of us. And there is a lot that academies can do pretty simply, I think. And all of this, I think the important insight about all of this is we have invested billions of dollars in how to help people recover from addiction, how to treat addiction. Many of those same techniques are applicable to this. That's the kind of nice thing. The good news is here, once you identify it as addiction, you have a whole panoply of options for helping people manage it without having to reinvent the wheel with all new forms of treatment and prevention programs. A lot of the addiction and treatment programs that we have are going to be applicable here. And they're going to be applicable everywhere, from school bullies to law enforcement officers and the military. When you you train men and women to go to battle and kill people and then bring them home again. And I've talked to veterans with no training, support, or prevention or treatment whatsoever to help them control those revenge cravings that saved their lives. You asked about dysfunctionality. I mean, you got to retaliate in battle, you're going to be killed. Then you come home, your revenge gratification instinct has been so finely developed, and we do nothing to support these veterans in helping them bring that back down again.